Cool.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to see you, Wes.
It's good to see you as well.
Um, so we're here to talk about your land acknowledgement comic. But before we get into that, let's just do a little introduction. You have been a friend of mine for a really long time, but let's hear it in your words. Who are you?
My name's Whess Harman. I'm Carrier-Watat, which is a nation from northern BC, not as north as Cole. Yeah, I'm an artist, a curator. I do zines. I do a lot of different things. I got my fingers in a lot of different pots. So just look at my website. It'll have a nicely written bio to better describe what I do.
Yeah, that's great. I've known Wes for, I don't know, like probably 6 years, maybe.
I think so.
I don't know if I met you like right away when I moved to Vancouver, but definitely within the first year, I
Mhm.
feel like I met you at Emily Carr, that art school we both went to. Anyway, I'm Cole Pauls. I make comics. I made Darkwater Warriors. I also drew last year's VanCAF Land Acknowledgement comic. So Izzy and VanCAF thought it would be a good idea to have the two of us chat about your land acknowledgement comic because, last year when I finished, they asked me who they should approach for next year's con, and I said you, because you're like my number one choice for everything.
You're like my number one fan for everything.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so why do you think it's important to make a land acknowledgement comic instead of just like a regular acknowledgement before an event happened?
uh, I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot, like over the course of the last year. A lot of my work has been inadvertently kind of about land and land acknowledgements. So I think the conversation with a lot of Indigenous folk is like, land acknowledgements are great and all, but there's not a lot beyond that. But there's also this kind of like ephemera about land acknowledgements, like they have become almost this throwaway thing. Um, and that's not to say that people don't go out of their way to write really sincere and personalized land acknowledgements, but it is something that kind of like fades off after, like maybe the event will be recorded or something, but it's not necessarily something permanent and something you can refer back to. And what I really like about the comic format is that it does become something that can be archived. And like looking between your land acknowledgement comic and mine, like earlier you're saying, like they just have very different vibes. And I think part of that is just through different people we've worked with. Um, but they add to the conversation in the way that a simple land acknowledgement at the beginning of an event that's for something else doesn't. So I think it just like, yeah, creates a better way of tracking kind of our thinking around what land acknowledgements are and what they mean and what they do.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. Um, it was really interesting to see your land acknowledgement comic finish today and then look at my comic from last year. And yeah, like you said, how it's like ideally the same message, but they go two completely different ways. Um, and you really can't show that when you're just, saying the bare minimum paragraph and getting on to whatever event you're hosting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, there's like, our stylistic differences too, because, we both we're different people and we have different influences, but we also like similar things. So I found that really interesting to like, hear your voice and what you ended up illustrating in the comic. Yeah, so about like illustrating, issues in the comic? Like, what were the most important messages for you to illustrate in the comic?
Oh man. um, I mean, it took so long to kind of like figure out a direction with how to do this, because I forget when Izzy approached me to do it. It was quite a while ago now, but between the course of being asked to do it for VanCAF this year and now, like so much has happened, and not just like pandemic, but the Wet'suwet'en solidarity protests that were happening in Vancouver, I was pretty involved in, and for like the full month of February right through till most of March, like that was my life suddenly, like being out at the blockades and protests, different occupation actions, and really being forced to think about what it means to be on land that is not, that I'm not native to, um, but still being an Indigenous person on that land. Like a lot of the actions we were doing were led by people of all different nations. There wasn't a huge amount of host nation involvement, but we're still holding these actions on their territories, which means like you still have to be conscious about like what kind of protocols you're doing and what kind of safety you're providing for community members who are of the host nation and who aren't. There were some pretty scary situations. Like there was a couple young people arrested from host nations, and because they were underage, it was a lot harder to track like what police station they've been taken to and like where we could catch them when they're coming out and all of those things. And what I was trying to communicate, I think, with this comic was like, as being someone who's been in institutions as much as I have, like I work at a gallery and like we both went to art school and like we attend a lot of lectures and things like that, like hearing a land acknowledgement, you can tell when they're insincere, and you know when the person reading it is just reading it because it's now become a part of like the mandate of whatever institution they work for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a land acknowledgement really needs to be a lot more than that. And it means saying the acknowledgement, but it also means showing up. And there were so many people that showed up. Like the community that came out for the protests were incredible. And there were a lot of the people who went to like Camp Cloud and Cessnam and like who come out for the Women's Memorial March every year. Like to me, that's truly paying the respect to the land, because you're also paying respect to the people that steward it.
Yeah, no, you like you show what it takes to be an ally in your comic, and you kind of you illustrate like you really face on uh the generic land acknowledgement in your comic, and like you really illustrate that how like you show up and you participate in these things and you actually put your face forward and fight for these rights. And what I found so interesting about your depictions were you showed all kinds of races and age groups. Like there's like an elder in one panel, and then your choice of colors too. Like you have like a wide variety of diversity in the comic. And when I think about my comic, it's like the final panel is kind of like the protest shot. And there's real people in it. Like there's 3 people in the front, and they're all Indigenous activists. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I find it really interesting that you like really illustrated like you don't have to be a certain type of person to do these things. Like you can literally just show up and participate and support. It's not like super complicated. You don't have to go through a ceremony. You just have to like actively stick your neck out.
Yeah, and I think like with Wet'suwet'en protests, that was probably the first time I've been that involved with any actions like that. And even for me, like I felt a lot of hesitation in the past, like while I Don't Know More was happening, where I was like, well, what do I have to offer? Like I don't have like songs or dances or like all of these things to offer to host nations that you would normally offer in these kind of situations. Mm-hmm. but the thing is, like, showing up and putting your body in between, like, just this huge machine, like having that very abstract, like, indigenous and human versus like corporate and industry, and like physically being present actually is a really great way to disrupt things, when applied appropriately. Um, and anyone can do that. Like, you can just be there. Like, there were so many times during the, especially the Clark and Hastings blockade, where particularly between like sticky hours around like, 2 3 a.m., where like a lot of people want to go home, and like, yeah, of course we all want to go home, and like some people were sending home because they've been there all day.
Hmm.
Literally just asking for bodies to fill space, because it's that solidarity of having our bodies there together that matters, and like the energy you bring, can really be very meaningful for people. Like, I've met so many people out at the protests, and honestly, so many people that I've been afraid to talk to in other social situations, because I'm like, oh no, they're too cool. Like, they wrote this book that I love, and like, they're really awesome, or they're in this band that I like, and just been too shy to talk to them.
Hmm.
But everyone came there with like so much love in their hearts, and like so much determination, and we were all there for the same thing. And it was, suddenly I have all these friendships now that have like before been so impossible.
Yeah, it's like no matter what your background or your education or whatever, it's like you go there and you're all on the same level,
Hmm.
and you all are there for the same cause. And it's like, you try and be as most respectful as you can, because it's important to like not uh, disrupt anything that's like in a violent manner or anything. It's very like we're here to make a presence and have it heard.
Yeah, yeah. And to be the kind of nuisance that can hopefully instigate some change. Um,
Yeah, yeah, totally.
like, I think the line definitely for all of us was like, we weren't coming there to be violent. Like, if there was any violence that was going to be incited, it was going to be the police who acted first. That was,
Yeah,
and I think establishing that rule and like reiterating that throughout the action really helped build the right kind of energy to be there, which felt
totally.
really special.
Yeah. Um, did anyone approach you because you made the land back patch or a land back patch? There's been a couple that have been made, but you made your own, and you were selling it as a fundraiser for West Wetton, and I'm sure a lot of strangers approached you for one because it's for a good cause, and yeah, it's a really beautiful object.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the arts really foster a lot of people with similar dispositions. Like, a lot of us are very anxious and have trouble in social situations. And yeah, I definitely had people being like, oh, I saw you at such and such talk, or like, I saw this work here. And definitely the lamb back patches were a very hot ticket item. I made the mistake of only ordering like 100 the first time and sold them out by the next evening. It was wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw people with like stacks of them. Like they were just like all out in their hands. I
Yeah.
mean, to be fair, I have bought like four off you, so I'm part of that problem.
It's cool. It's cool. I think, I don't know, there's something, it's really nice to have that. And there's something nice about imagery, about protest imagery, where it's like Christy Belcourt, I think, is probably the most prolific image maker right now in terms of like protests, like the water is sacred and the different
Mhm.
variations of the those posters. And like a couple people, yeah, like I think it was the second round of patches. They're like, oh shoot, I really wanted one last time, because they're just such a reminder of all of that, all of those things that we just went through, and they become really tied to those places. And throughout the protests, so I'm friends with Bear from Tribe Called Red. So they asked if they could use the patch for the single, and like, that was so cool. And just like
Yeah.
another thing to kind of like tie this moment together that was happening across Turtle Island.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, like I got my vest behind me. I got it right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Round 3 is coming up, officially ordered.
Totally. Um, yeah. So, speaking of, art and influences, who, who did you look at like the most when making this comic? And I know like we have a close friendship outside of comics and inside comics a lot because we have this manga book swap club, and we get to talk about a lot of that outside of off screen. So who let's put it on paper. Who are you most influenced by?
uh, well, Junji Ito obviously comes up. The weird thing about this comic is like because I'm depicting in some cases like real people. I feel really self-conscious about like distorting bodies. And like I love horror manga like Junji Ito. He's always pushing bodies into those weird extremes and bending and abstracting reality.
Mm-hmm.
So like definitely top tier for me. Taya Matsumoto, I would love to be able to draw cityscapes the way that he does.
Mm-hmm.
What else have I been reading? Um, I read a lot of like BL boys love manga, so like the artist varies. Um, yeah, there's this one I'm just looking at. I can't remember their name.
It's really interesting to me, like swapping comics with you to like read, because I can really see the books that you let me borrow, like their influences on you,
Mhm.
like uh, Teo Matsumoto, like his hands. I feel like you draw hands so similar to him, and he also like the way he expresses faces are always like really still, or they're like open mouth. And then there's some panels where they're like really um, distorted, and it reminds me of your masks actually.
Mm.
Like when you let me borrow Blue Spring, um, there's all these like crazy faces in that comic, and that was like the first thing I was like, oh, these remind me of Wes's mask drawings.
Yeah, I feel like the first time I saw Tekon Concrete, like my mind just exploded, and then
Yeah, like
immediately
everybody,
had to like glom onto everything.
totally.
Um, yeah, I think I saw that when I was in high school still. That's
Yeah.
a pretty long lasting impression. Uh,
This is a little off topic,
hmm.
but have you watched the Junji Ito Man Band documentary yet?
I have it open and I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's so good. One thing I found really interesting about it was that he has this story which is collected in Shiver,
Hmm.
and it's like this guy. He has like a really long forehead, and it like is like constantly growing. It's like a weird centipede thing that's like like 1,000 foreheads,
Mhm.
and uh, the host of that show was like, what's your influence for that story? And he said totem poles. I
Yeah,
was like, what?
yeah,
So it was really interesting for me to hear that, um, just because like people can get a source of inspiration from like indigenous culture, but not like appropriate it in any way. You
yeah,
know, like there is like a way for you to be like that really influenced me and not be racist about it, and that I like that's an example.
yeah. And then like I would say like as far as drawing masks, for me, like my biggest influence is easily Bo Dick. Like,
Yeah.
but I'm not trained in form line, and like more so like I don't know Kwak form line. Like there's such a language within form line itself. Like even I don't feel comfortable like trying to emulate Bodick exactly. But I'm
Mhm.
like, what I love about a lot of his masks is they do look like they are so close to the verge of movement, and they look so human. Um, and yeah, I just love the idea of being able to bend that through drawing. Like there's so many rules that you can break through drawing, that you can't break with physical things. So like I always kind of think of the masks as like if I wanted them to start moving, like how mystifying would that be, and like but also like how horrifying would that be?
No, that's a really important point because like when I was approached to make my land acknowledgement comic, I thought it was really important to collaborate with someone who is of a Vancouver nation.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I collaborated with Swiss, the Squamish herbalist, amazing human and friend. And I thought it was really important to include her because I'm not from this land. Like, I grew up in the Yukon. I'm a Champagne-Ajax citizen, but I'm Teltan, right? So I'm technically a BC indigenous person, but I'm not of this land. Like, I'm, you know, I'm up north and we're at the bottom. So what was your thoughts on that when you created your comic?
Yeah, similar feel. I collaborate, or well, initially I was collaborating with someone, and the idea would be that we would kind of split the drawing as well, but it didn't work out. There was a lot of things going on for them, so we weren't able to work in that way. So I ended up writing a script, and I shared that with Quige Iwans, who's a musician, also an illustrator. I didn't find out until afterwards, and a tattooist who is from Host Nation. And yeah, like I think you set up a really good groundwork last year with that, because this year they were like, we'd like you to do this, and we also have an honorarium to offer to someone that you can consult with. And like, of course, like I would always love to be able to pay people more for their knowledge and like for their time and things. But like these things are always a step, and I think it was really, I would have felt so uncomfortable to do this completely alone, like without any consultation. And I also didn't want to ask Cease again, because I'm like, I know Cease is busy, and like the last time I talked to Cease, she called me from the hospital while I was like getting ready to do the Together Apart event at Grunt Gallery, because she was doing like a nature walk workshop with us that was for like Two-Spirit and Indigiqueer only. So I was really excited about it. And then she calls me from the hospital. And I was like, what are you doing in the hospital? And she's like, oh, you know, I'm just so bored waiting here. I'm like, Cease, what happened? She's like, oh, I think I broke my ankle wearing my Blundstones. It's like you, she's like, it was so mind blowing to me. And she's like, well, I mean, I have this time here. I may as well deal with some of the stuff I haven't been answering. I'm like, are you kidding? So,
So funny. Yeah, that was like
yeah.
a couple months after I finished my collab with her.
Yeah.
It was like last summer or something.
Yeah, and that was something that came up too, is like just trying to mediate these ideas of fatigue with host nation folks. It's like they're busy, and like this comes up a lot. I find like working at Grunt is like where you don't want to overtax the host nations with like all these random projects you have, because they're getting proposals from many different institutions and getting asked from many different institutions. But I think in this case, it like really made sense to do that, because it is something that's going to be printed in multiple, it's going to be shared and distributed. It's like, it's very crucial to have that consultation and collaboration with it.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad that I got to have the power to just like suggest a bunch of my friends, and then they went with the first pick, and that you were the first pick. For something like for next year, and you know, fingers crossed, you know, the world is normal and everyone's healthy and happy. Who would you pick?
I would pick Quige, in part because I'm really curious to see like what kind of work they would do. It'd be really, I think, amazing and appropriate to have someone from Host Nation be able to do that. And like, again, like this is just another scarcity thing. I think that comes up a lot, is like your name and my name comes up a lot because people know that we draw. And I feel like we've kind of become a part of this like little circle of like canon Indigenous illustrators working right now. But like we're overtaxed too. Like we can't do every project that gets proposed to us. But yeah, I'd really love to see someone from Host Nation do it next year. Kelsey Sparrow is also really great. I know so many weavers. I'm like,
Honestly, I think it would be really cool to see someone who doesn't do comics to make
yeah,
it make the land acknowledgement comic, because it's like you really, I mean, you know, we're images are cool and all, but like it's like you want to know the message from that person. So I'd be really interested to hear what a weaver has to say about land acknowledgement. You know,
mhm.
like they might think of it, you know, differently just because they don't illustrate things the way we do.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be cool to see, yeah, just maybe different opportunities for collaboration and like different approaches. And there's so many different ways to make comics. I'm reading that one you gave me, Michael Cornell. Is that, am I reading that right? It's far.
Michael Como?
Yes, that one.
Yeah,
Like there's so much collaging in that one. Like there's just so many
yeah,
ways to approach it. It's like it's one thing to be able to draw, but another thing to kind of figure out solutions if you don't draw. And that's what's beautiful about like zines in general, is like you're not really, I don't think any of us are perfect at anatomy or drawing cities or like all these different things we need to communicate. But what's interesting about each of our styles is the solutions we find in trying to communicate it. So,
yeah, totally. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much all my notes. Do you have anything else you want to say about the comic or anything?
oh, you asked me if there are like any real people in it. Do you want to share screen? Should we share screens?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
We both cleaned up our desktops so no one has to see our dirty secrets. Oh,
okay, cool. You see it?
yep. So a lot of the faces are pretty obscured in this, but a couple of them are real people. So the first panel there is based off of my friend CM, who was mostly at the Victoria occupation at BC Ledge, but also came and joined us to occupy Melanie Mark's office. Just a really lovely, beautiful person. So that's with the cedar hat and the drum bag. And then beside them, uh, everyone's standard issue protest wear, denim jackets, patches, etc. That patch is actually designed by my friend Mangisheg. I think he's still selling them. I think you'd have to look up Joshua Paulus Steckley on Instagram to find him. But he's a, oh my God, woodland style artist who's been living in Vancouver. And the person wearing it is actually based off of my friend's partner, Richard, because I just think Richard's so beautiful. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna draw Richard. All the people in the car, just random people's outfits that I admire while I'm out and about. Actually, the first person in the first one is kind of based off of my friend Mary Claire, who was so helpful every time I went to Victoria, just picking up rides and bombing us back and forth between the BC Legend ferries. Going down to the bottom panels, the person reading the land acknowledgement in that one, I was drawing it and then I realized I was basically drawing like Cyber 6, so I had to change the design a little. I was like, whoops. The top two panels of the little scenes from different protests, I'm not sure, but I think I accidentally drew Queese twice. Queese was a protester who's been at Camp Cloud and been at everything and like did a really important job holding down the fort and at the blockades in Vancouver here. So the middle person, that first one, I think is her, and then sitting in the chair in the next one, I'm like, oh my God, I think that's Quetzal. Whoops. um, yeah, and then the last panel there is, you can't really tell from it because I kind of lost steam, but it's a shot of Massey Books, which is a Indigenous owned bookstore in Vancouver. If you don't know it already, you should definitely go check it out. They hold events there. Indigenous Experience is usually hosted there. One day we'll be able to gather again.
I sell my book there.
Yeah, they sell your book there. And the books on the shelf there, I drew the covers of a couple of my favorite poetry books. So Brandy Bird's Am I Still Too Much? Billy Ray Valcourt's This Wound is a World, Ariel Twist's Disintegration Dissociation, and then Lindsay Nixon's it's not all poetry, it's kind of like a autobiography style thing. And then I realized after I finished, I'm like, I should have drawn Cole's book.
That's fine.
It's fine. Next time.
Well, I love how you drew like ovoids spewing out of people's mouths.
Mm-hmm.
And the word bubble too at the very end, where you're like explaining what what the acknowledgement is really good too. I love the whole thing, all the textures. I love how you put so much pink on the paper that it's like the paper is pink and the white is the spot color. It's like a role reversal in my brain. Yeah, I really like what you've illustrated and like how you've portrayed everything. It's so smart and so concise and like full of detail, but also like just the right amount of information that it doesn't feel like you've like sugar-coated anything. And there's something you said to me the other day, which I think really resonates with your work now, is that how you're like, sometimes I feel like I put pink in my work because it makes the message of the story less scary to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think that could be true.
Yeah, I love pink is my favorite color. I use it in a lot of my work, not just comics, but like the piece I had up at Oak Ridge and 41st this year was a similar pink. And I also find it really soothing, like to work with when I'm working with it. It's just a very calming color.
Yeah, I love spot coloring too. It's like totally my jam. I have slowly evolved from just black and white work to adding one color. Maybe by the time we're both like 80, we'll have like 6 colors in our comics.
Yeah, I mean, color is intimidating. Like, I think the people that I admire who use color do it in such a way that I just get so overwhelmed that I don't even know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really admire colored work.
That's probably one of the other really big contrasting things for us.
Yeah.
Here we go. Like mine, completely different color scheme than yours. Like ours looks so different, but they have the same meaning. And, we're both talking about two similar things, but still different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really love yours. Like it was like working with Cease, and knowing Cease, I'm like, this makes complete sense. Like I see completely how this got here, but like being able to name and acknowledge the actual individual species of plants and animals on land that you live on is such an important way of like understanding where it is that you're living. And it's just, yeah. I'm so bad at identifying plants. I need to spend more time with Cease.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we could all benefit that from spending more time with Cease for sure.
Mm-hmm. Who are the activists in the bottom of yours?
Oh, okay. I should have kept on doing the share screen thing. It is. I'm gonna feel really bad because I can't remember any of their names. Well, one, okay. These are all Cease's close friends. Like she knows them personally, and she wanted to include them in the comic. Mm-hmm. Cease was very directional with the comic. Like I barely wrote any of this.
Mm.
Like I illustrated her voice completely, which was really nice as a collaboration.
Mm.
To just kind of like turn off that part of my brain and just like illustrate what she wanted to say.
Mm.
Um, but one of them is the Butterflies in Spirit dance group here in Vancouver, and they perform for murdered and missing Indigenous women,
Mm.
and that's one of their founding members. The man in the middle with the eagle feathers, that's Eugene Harry. Um, which have you met him?
I think so.
He I first met him through the AGP because
Okay.
he would come there for like healings and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and anyway, yeah. So he's like he's a shaman here. He's a medicine man, and he does a lot of like rural healing in
Hmm.
the downtown east side, and he's a super nice guy. When I used to work at a certain thrift store, he would go there every day, and I would talk to him all the time. And he remembered me from Emily Carr, and he would always ask me how I was doing, and he like made it very clear that he cared.
Aw.
Um, so he was a really nice guy. And then when Cease mentioned him, I was like, yes, we should include him. Um, and then, oh man, I feel so bad. I tried looking this up before we started this, but the third, like the last woman on the left, she organizes like a salmon uh, fundraising, and she's all against like fish farming and stuff. And she's a really nice woman too.
Hmm.
I feel, oh man, you put me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. But yeah, they're all three people that Cease really wanted in the comic.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, it was fun. It was really good to work with her, and it was interesting too, because like at last year's VanCAF, we kind of did like an opening ceremony when the event already started, because we thought it was more important to do it when it had started versus like at the beginning when like half the attendance was there.
Yeah, yeah.
So we did it at like noon or 1 or something when VanCAF was completely full. And we went into one of the halls and we hooked up an amp and a microphone, and Cease performed a Squamish song, and it was about spring bees and butterflies and how it's like springtime, and how insects all have their part in nature and how like we all rely on them.
Mhm.
And it was really beautiful. And she got me on the spot too, and she was just like, yeah, come on, sing with me, just like go for it, like you don't know the song, but whatever, just come up, like stand beside me and sing with me. So I did.
Oh
um
gosh.
and VanCAF has a bunch of photos of it on their website, so if you're interested in that, you can check that out.
Aw.
um yeah, I think you did a really good job, and I love your comic, and I love your art. You're like one of my favorite working illustrators like ever, period. Like I feel so blessed to call you a friend, let alone like a close friend, like I just love how you illustrate things, and you're so eloquent and speaking. And you were saying during the protest how you feel like you're like a bundle of emotions, and how you find it really hard to like express sometimes. But I think you're so good at speaking, especially like you said about the police violence and how that will be the only violence at these protests. Like when I read that quote, I was like, oh my god, I'm so happy to call you a close friend. Like I can't believe someone I know said something like that. Like it like really was felt very very special to know that a person I knew said that.
Aw. Now I'm all blushy and sweaty. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's I feel spoiled to call you my friend.
As do I. You are well known across this country.
Yeah. Wow, this was a really good talk. Do you? Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say besides give Chi a good cuddle for me,
Of course.
and yeah, let me know when you're done reading those books so I can talk to you about them.
I'm so close. I'm gonna reread. I'm gonna reread Tech on Concrete, and then I'm gonna finish the 6 fan art challenge, and then we can trade comics.
Yeah, yeah. I still need to read Laura Dean. Keeps breaking up with me, but I've been so into Sunny because it gets so good. Like the first volume was good, but man, the second volume's so sad, and then like they just explain more and more about the characters, so you're just like you get so attached to them.
Yeah,
I'm like, I have to start volume 5, and I'm like, I kind of don't want to start it because I know there's only 2 more books. You know, it's like one of those things where you're like,
I am. Yeah,
this
so
is so good.
classic at not finishing things because I don't want it to end. Yeah, it's okay. We'll make it through. All of us and our feelings.
Yeah, well, I'll finish reading it, and then I'll let you borrow it, and then we can talk about all of our emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Aw,
All
should
right.
we?
Well, yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks for talking to me.
You too.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Uh, see you later.
Bye. Take care. Hug Goomba.
Whoa, yeah, I will.